Today I'll teach you how to perform server-side drop-down list validation in ASP.NET Core. So let's start. So the very first thing, I'll open Solution Explorer, and from there I'll be opening the model class. Now inside the class, I am adding a namespace called system.componentModel.Data Annotations. This particular namespace is required for data annotations. Here I'll be adding one single property called gender, which will be a string property. As you can see, at present I am adding a data annotation required, and I am setting the error message for it. This particular data annotation is used for performing required validations. It is very similar to required field validator. So with this, our model class is complete. Now let's move to the view. First, I'll inherit the tag helper classes of the ASP.NET Core. The next thing I am doing is adding a form. The method attribute I am setting to post. Then I am setting the ASP controller attribute to home. And lastly, the ASP action attribute to index. Now inside the form, I am creating an HTML table, and within the HTML table, I am adding an HTML drop-down list element. The HTML drop-down list element is set with an ASP4 attribute. The ASP4 attribute is used to assign a model property to the element. It is later used to fetch the value and also for validation of the element. Finally, I am adding some options to the HTML drop-down list. I will now add items to the drop-down list. The first item will be a default value. So I am setting the default value as please select, and in that I am adding two objects. The first object is for the first option, which is male, and the value I am setting as M, and in that text I am setting as male. In similar way, for the second option I am setting that value as F and text as female. The next thing I am adding is the HTML span element, which will be used to display the validation error message. The HTML span has been set with an ASP validation for attribute. This particular attribute will be used for displaying the validation message for the model property. Now here you will notice I am adding attribute named class. This is required for setting the CSS class. Now I am adding a submit button, and for that I am making use of input element, and I am setting the type as submit. When the button is clicked, we can verify the validation. Now let's move to the controller. Inside the controller, now I am adding an action result method for handling post call. The reason is that I'll be submitting a form. So that form will be submitted to this particular method. I am naming it as index, and I am passing the person model class object as parameter. Inside the action method, the state of the submitted model is checked using model_state.isValid property. And if the model is valid, then the value of the gender property is set in a viewBack object. In the end, the view function is written which completes the action result method. Now let's move to the top of the action result method, where I'll be adding the HTTP post attribute. Now again, let's move back to the view. Firstly, I am checking whether the state of the model is valid or not. If the state of the model is valid, then the value of the viewBack object will be displayed using razor syntax. So now here I'll be displaying a message from controller inside the view. For that purpose, I'll be making use of viewBack object, ViewBag allows us to create a dynamic objects. That means we don't have to define the data type. Here I have pasted some CSS classes. This is required for styling the view as well as setting the color for the error message which will be displayed during validation. So with this we complete our programming part, and now it's time to run our project and see it in action. As you can see, the drop-down list is now displaying the default item, and when I click the button, the error message is displayed. Now let me select a valid value. So now I am clicking on the button. As you can see, the form has been submitted, which means I have selected a valid value and that validator has considered it as valid. So with this we come to the end of this video. Thanks for watching. Please like, share and subscribe, and don't forget to click the bell icon. Goodbye.